Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the Summa devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Summa devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Summa devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. Reading from. Can you turn this down slightly? It seems very loud. You know? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text number 37. Kim va krita agheshu agham ati amarshi bhimah ahivat dirghatamam vyamunchat yasya angripatam ranabhuhu na sehe margam gadayah sharatah vichitram kim va kritageshvagham atyamarshi bhimo hiva dirghatamam vyamunchat yasyangripatam ranabhur nasehe margam gadayascharato vichitram kim va kritageshvagham atyamarshi bhimo hivad dirghatamam vyamunchat yasyangripatam ranabhur nasehe margam gadayascharato vichitram kim va kritageshvagham atyamarshi bhimo hiva dirghatamam vyamunchat yasyangripatam ranabhur nasehe margam gadayascharato vichitram. Please repeat.
Patam Ranabhurna Sehe Margam Gadayashcharato Vichitram
Mataji's? Kim, whether. Va, either. Krita, performed. Agheshu, unto the sinners. Agham, angry. Ati amarshi, unconquerable. Bhimaha, Bhima. Ahivat, like a cobra. Dirghatamam, long cherished. Vyamunchat, has released. Yasya, whose. Angripatam, putting on the steps. Ranabhuhu, the field of battle. Na, could not. Sehe, tolerate. Margam, the path. Gadayaha, by the clubs. Charataha, playing. Vichitram, wonderful. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Please tell me whether the unconquerable Bhima, who is like a cobra, has released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners. The field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. Purport. Vidura knew the strength of Bhima. Whenever Bhima was on the battlefield, his steps on the path and the wonderful playing of his club were unbearable for the enemy. Powerful Bhima did not take steps against the sons of Dhritarashtra for a long time. Vidura's inquiry was whether he had yet released his anger, which was like that of a suffering cobra. When a cobra releases its venom after long-cherished anger, its victim cannot survive. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupakada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shta Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vidam Shta Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Pajaleshmate Bhaktivikasa Swamin Itinamane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Pajaleshmate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Prasharne Nirvishesha Shunamari Paschatya Deshitarne Bhutir Mahadviri Mafpur Puro Vibor Nirdamaya Shiti Amusha Purashaha Bhunkti Gunan Shudasha Shudashatmaka Shalang Shista Bhagavam Vachamsi Me. The Lord enlivened the material ingredients by entering within them and giving life to otherwise dead matter. Similarly, I pray that the Lord may enter into my words and also decorate my statements. So, I'm not a scholar in Mahabharata. Here we see, I'll briefly gloss over this. So Bhima, as we're hearing from Maharaj actually, he was speaking how normally when you get angry, the anger dissipates over time, but it's mentioned here that Bhima's anger just increased over time after the Sat Sabha, the attempt to disrobe Draupadi. So Vidura is inquiring about this, whether Bhima was able to unleash this anger, and what is upon the sinners specifically. You see, he's addressing the Kuru dynasty, the Duryodhana's party, Dhritarashtra's party, as sinners, because he understood. He tried to give them good advice, and he was rejected, and ultimately he left that association. So, main thing here is that so powerful Bhima did not take steps against the sons of Dhritarashtra for a long time, but eventually he did. Immediately he wanted to, but he was restrained. and when it came time to take action, he definitely took action. Bhima, of course, is famous. He's a partial incarnation of Vayu. He's very, very strong. Madhvas consider him Jivottama, the highest of all living entities, Vayu specifically. So he possesses immense power, as was shown even during his childhood. We were hearing yesterday that even during when Bhima was a boy, he would bully isn't the word, almost torture Duryodhana with just messing around with him. He would pull him under the water, as we were hearing, almost as bringing him to almost the point as if drowning. And then later he was fed. There's another incident that's recounted. He was fed a poison cake at one point, Vishak Mahagne, etc., like that. So Bhima was fed poison, but Bhima possessed such strength so, backstory, Duryodhana, he fed Bhima a poison cake, and Bhima ate it, but he exhibited no signs of being affected by the poison whatsoever. And Duryodhana, he was wondering what's going on. Eventually, it started having some effect on Bhima, but he's such a powerful fighter and such a powerful character. So he repressed his anger with good cause against the Kuru, specifically Duryodhana, but generally the Kuru dynasty as a whole. But the important point here is that he came to release it. Bhima wasn't, and the Pandavas in general, they weren't spineless. Srila Prabhupada will often make the point that a Vaishnava is not spineless. And just like within Bhagavad Gita itself, Srila Prabhupada repeatedly makes this point about Arjuna, who's another brother of Bhima, one of the other Pandavas. Arjuna himself, he was also a great fighter. Within the context of Bhagavad Gita, we see him faltering by the arrangement of the Lord. But throughout his life, Arjuna was renowned as one of the greatest warriors on the planet, specifically one of the best bowmen, unrivaled by anybody. And as well, he gives, Srila Prabhupada elsewhere in the first canto, he gives the example of Hanuman. And it's to Hanuman is glorified today as a great devotee of Lord Ram, of course. But why? Chiefly what he's remembered for, actually, is by his burning of Lanka. So it's by his aggression, by Hanuman's aggression, by Arjuna's aggression, by Bhima's aggression, they were all glorified as devotees, and not otherwise. Srila Prabhupada will often address this common misconception that devotees are meant to be pushovers, for lack of a better word, spineless like that, and just take things as they come. The Pandavas, due to adherence to Dharma, they submitted to what, on one hand, they acted dharmically, just as like they lost the gambling match, and so they adhered to that. They gave their word and they went into exile. They gave their kingdom, etc., and they went into exile. But on the other hand, they understood that the kingdom was rightfully theirs, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the first chapter of the Gita. And so they weren't blind to that. They weren't dumb to that, because they could understand that if we have the kingdom, Dhritarashtra and his men, they're unlawfully occupying this seat. They're not the rightful rulers, and the people are being oppressed by them. Better to have the Pandavas on the throne, Yudhishthira specifically on the throne. So the Pandavas, they weren't a pushover. Therefore, when they came out of exile, they again took up the fight like this. They asked for a small piece of land, etc. Most of us know the story. Then Duryodhana denied that, and then it escalated to the whole full-blown Kurukshetra, battle of Kurukshetra, specific Kurukshetra war, you could say, like that. So the Pandavas didn't take it lying down. Devotees don't take opposition lying down, contrary to what outsiders would conceive about sadhus or saintly people. And we see the case with our acharyas, similarly to many. Ramanujacharya, he had so much opposition. Madhvacharya especially, he didn't take anything lying down. He's famous, known today for his staunch opposition to Mayavad specifically, but so many other elements. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, especially so. He is also within the same category, and our own Srila Prabhupada too. He didn't take things lying down. He wasn't. He was a very strong personality, our Srila Prabhupada, and he was an aggressive personality. He said, regarding his coming to the West, he said, "If I wasn't aggressive, how could I have come to the West?" Because so many people were telling him, nobody invited him. He didn't have an invitation. He didn't have a place to stay necessarily. There was no arrangement for him to come to the West, but he was aggressive in coming to the West. And by doing so, by his coming to the West, so much success came from that. By his aggressively preaching Krishna consciousness like that. And so similarly too, we have our own experience going out to distribute books. Nobody asks us for a book. Nobody's asking us to go out. The devotees may ask us, or acharyas may ask us, but the public is not asking us. They don't want the books. They're actively avoiding the books. But because of aggression, because of the aggression on part of the devotees, that aggression is actually an act of mercy, because it induces people to take up Krishna consciousness. By Srila Prabhupada's act of aggression, coming to the West and forcefully preaching Krishna consciousness, so many people took up Krishna consciousness as a result, and he was successful. So similarly, the aggression of a devotee is glorified. Srila Prabhupada, he writes about Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was not as timid so-called Vaishnavas. And elsewhere, he states that we don't want these Vaishnavas, sitting down rascals. We want Arjuna, or we want no one. We see Srila Prabhupada amongst his own disciples, Srila Prabhupada himself, same as Bhima here, he exhibited anger, he exhibited aggression, and he pushed his disciples to do so as well. Just like famously in 1976, I think, the latter part of 76, Srila Prabhupada commented, chant Hare Krishna and fight. There's that chapter in the Lilamrita. In regards to the brainwashing cases that were going on during America at the time, different groups, specifically one group of deprogrammers, they were accusing the movement and trying to sue the movement, make a case against the movement, actually, that trying to get it banned, for lack of a better word to put it simply. And so Srila Prabhupada, he very aggressively took up the cause, not just against this, against so many different things. We see, if we study Srila Prabhupada, he was in almost as if a martial spirit in coming to the West. Not initially. If you hear classes from 1966-67, we see his gradual approach to introducing Krishna consciousness. But you see gradually, whereas the early devotees remember Mukunda Goswami, Satsarup Das Goswami, etc., the Brahmananda Prabhu, etc., they mainly remember Srila Prabhupada as a sort of friend, grandfather, well-wisher, etc., like that. Mainly devotees joining, we can say maybe like 1972 onwards, they remember Srila Prabhupada as almost as a general, something like that. Many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they give this analogy or this feeling that Srila Prabhupada was the general of a great army, and they were one of the foot soldiers. Some of them liken themselves to monkeys in the army of Lord Ram. And so Srila Prabhupada himself, he took up this cause. We see he was in martial spirit, and he used martial analogies. Just like famously, that one letter, books are akin to the bombs, I'm paraphrasing. Books are like bombs, and the temples are like the bases. The devotees are like soldiers. The overall effort elsewhere, Srila Prabhupada refers, is like a blitz. So, and so many different things. In the Gita, elsewhere, so many times, Srila Prabhupada referred to declaring war against the illusory energy. He said we're fighting a war against Maya, and he referred to his devotees as the foot soldiers of his movement. And he gave different examples in this regard. It's very similar, actually. Devotees, Krishna-conscious devotees, specifically the brahmacharis, which at that time mainly the movement was consisted of, and even the grihastas, more or less, they were basically brahmacharis, how they were living. And so they were akin to soldiers. So just like soldiers, they're expected to adhere to a line of command. So similarly, too, Srila Prabhupada organized his movement in such a way. Just like, what is that? Anyway, there's one quote, I didn't get it here. But submission to the immediate officer or commander, Srila Prabhupada said. Whatever ordered is done. So similarly, devotees, they're expected to submit to the immediate authority. Srila Prabhupada expected devotees to submit to the temple president, then subsequently GBC, which then subsequently submitted to Srila Prabhupada himself. So Srila Prabhupada set up a system like this, and it wasn't a question of debates or a question of compromising, etc., like this. If Srila Prabhupada gave an order, devotees were immediately expected to do it. Otherwise, just like in the army, it's like an act of treason. So similarly, disobeying the order of the spiritual master is considered a great offense. It's death to the spiritual life. So, yes, going on with the other things, declaring war against Maya, fighting against ignorance, specifically. Srila Prabhupada was fighting against so many different things in society. And, well, before I get onto that, I'll come back to that. Regarding the devotees, he wanted, just as there's soldiers, foot soldiers, Srila Prabhupada, he referred to his leaders as lieutenants. And he wanted the leaders of his movement to just act in the Vedic conception of a general, just as we've heard many times in the Bhagavatam, that the Vedic idea of a general, I mean, just like Bhima. Bhima is one of the generals of the Pandavas, but we don't think of him as a general. Yudhishthir himself is the general of the Pandavas, but we see Yudhishthir, he's fighting on the front lines. In the first canto, Srila Prabhupada writes something like, to paraphrase, that Kshatriya is not a Kshatriya if he doesn't return. A leader is not a leader if he doesn't return from the battlefield with some sort of scar, some sort of wound like that. So it's not that just the foot soldiers are expected to be on the front lines in the Vedic conception of warfare, Kshatriya, warriors, etc. like this. The leaders themselves, the kings themselves, go to the front lines and they lead. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted his leaders of his movement, those taking posts of responsibility within Krishna consciousness movement, to lead by example, by doing the things themselves, not just to be armchair generals, as Srila Prabhupada would say, or armchair philosophers like that. He warned against introducing too much bureaucracy into the movement, and he wanted his leaders to actively, the best way for a leader to inspire others to preach is to preach himself. And one letter to, who was that? I think it was Atreya Rishi at the time in the West Coast. So Srila Prabhupada, he had written one letter that some of us may know. I won't cover it in detail, but a long letter, how Srila Prabhupada, he didn't want the movement centralized. He wanted an independent method. He wanted an independent way of governing the movement, or the decentralized method of governing the movement. And so one devotee, president then of San Francisco Temple, I think, he went to Srila Prabhupada and he wanted to centralize 3 temples that were all close by. And he knew about this order, and so he put together a big presentation for Srila Prabhupada, showing the pros, showing the cons, showing all the results of everything, a very detailed analysis. And he brought it to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada approved it, actually. But he remarked to this devotee, yes, you can go through this, but I'm always afraid that it will become, in other words, that this vouchers, Srila Prabhupada used this word, too much paperwork, too much receipts, too much vouchers, too much bureaucracy, and the leaders, they'll just sit back and take it almost as if a profession. Rather, I want my leaders, rather you should go and you should preach. And by doing so, you get, elsewhere he explained that, doing so you get energy and you enthuse others around you. So, of course, those things are necessary. Srila Prabhupada also wanted everybody to be, at least some devotees, to be competent in accounting, running accounts, incorporating each branch. Here in America, Srila Prabhupada, each independent center had to be incorporated. So he wanted devotees, the point is, he wanted devotees competent in these legal aspects, these technical aspects, but he didn't want leaders overly caught up with such. Just as a Vedic general isn't expected to sit back in an office 10,000 miles behind the battlefield to move pawn pieces, he's expected to lead from the front. So similarly, too, leaders are expected to lead from the front. And to this point of that inspires others, Srila Prabhupada, he would make the point quite often that everything hinges on the leaders. So if the leaders are an ideal example, naturally the devotees will be an ideal example. If the leaders themselves are preaching, as Srila Prabhupada was, naturally the devotees will be inspired to preach. If the leaders are chanting 16 rounds visibly, then the devotees will see what is the standard of sadhana, etc. like that. But if the leaders don't give a proper example, then everything else gradually deteriorates. So Srila Prabhupada expected this of his lieutenants. It's just as is, even now, of course, at least in the West, there's not many wars, but when wars are going on, we've seen historically, the generals, formerly they were foot soldiers. It's not that the generals of the war, at least formerly, they were fighting, they were just politicians or bureaucrats. They rose to that position because they themselves were competent fighters. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted his leaders to not only lead, but also be competent fighters. Just as Bhima is a very good example. He was a very strong fighter, but at the same time, he's commanding so many different forces, etc. like that. Krishna himself commanded, well, he gave that division over, but Krishna himself is an incredible fighter. Who can compare with Krishna? So, etc. like that. So, one quote from Srila Prabhupada, you are setting a very good example in that you are going with a traveling party. He wrote this to Satsarup Das Goswami, who was GBC for, I think, this area, if not the New York area and surrounding Boston, etc. like that. But simultaneously, he was traveling with a BBT library party at the time, and he may have been heading that, I forget. But they were distributing Bhagavatam sets of Srila Prabhupada's books to different libraries and universities, professors like that. So not only was he managing in this way, he was daily going to meet so many professors, so many librarians, etc. like this. So Srila Prabhupada was pleased with this. He continued, the Vedic concept of the commander is that he must be in the front in the fight, not that he sits back behind the lines. And I mentioned, etc., getting overly involved in paperwork, etc. like this. So this is just another example of how Srila Prabhupada, he likened his movement to almost as if his devotees to an army, his movement declaring war against Maya. This war against Maya is not something physical, as in, in one 1966 letter, one Mataji, she wrote Srila Prabhupada asking about killing demons. And Srila Prabhupada wrote in response that no, it's not, killing demons isn't to be taken literally. Rather, this killing refers to the killing of the demonic mentality. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada made the point that other avatars of Vishnu's, this Vinashaya Duskritam, this killing the demons that's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says each time he incarnates, he protects the devotees, and he kills the demons. So Srila Prabhupada made the point that Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, in this incarnation, he doesn't kill the demons, rather he kills the demonic mentality. So the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement and their war against Maya, they're expected to kill this demonic mentality that's present in society. How? So specifically, distribution of knowledge throughout society, combating misconceptions. A very important thing about killing this demonic mentality. A mentality is composed nothing more of just conceptions. You could say ideas, conceptions, preconceived notions, etc., like that. And there's many different misconceptions that are floating around in society that we have to counter. There are many different people who are misleading society, which devotees have to actively go against and expose. Srila Prabhupada said he's declared a war against all swamis, all yogis, all pseudo-religionists, all politicians, all leaders, and all scientists. Why? Because practically all these people, or those representing themselves as leaders, swamis, scientists, etc., for the most part, as Srila Prabhupada said, they're just disguised rascals, more or less. Somebody's posing themselves as a swami or sannyasi, but they're speaking in personal philosophy. They don't speak about Krishna at all. Or maybe that was during Srila Prabhupada's time. Now they don't even follow any sort of yama, any regular principles. We see somebody's having usually Mayavadi tilak. They may be wearing saffron, maybe sometimes no tilak. They may be wearing a saffron cloth, but practically they're immensely wealthy. They have so close relations with their female followers. They're living in opulence. There's no sort of, even the basics of renunciation aren't followed. Politicians, Srila Prabhupada is very, just as the Bhagavatam says, in Kali Yuga, the politicians, they're like thieves who steal from the general population. So elsewhere in 1517, I think it is, Srila Prabhupada writes that the common man, the common population are like tools in the hands of modern politicians. So pseudo-religionists, people promoting, yoga, etc., like this, that TM was very popular during Srila Prabhupada's time. He would openly criticize it, actually. Sometimes he would mention directly, sometimes indirectly, that some groups are selling a mantra. Sometimes he would openly say that the head of this organization, he's bogus. This TM is bogus. The selling of a mantra is openly bogus. He was very aggressive. He wasn't reserved. So people, devotees, or even just common people, they'll approach Srila Prabhupada and ask about, Srila Prabhupada, what do you think about this person? What do you think about A, B, C, D? And if Srila Prabhupada didn't have a good opinion, most of the time, not most of the time, of course, depending on the circumstance where he's at and the person, but he wasn't shy about being outright with a person, exposing a cheater, calling a spade, exposing cheating, because it's necessary. If we don't expose cheaters, then the people in general get cheated. Therefore, we see Srila Prabhupada who's very strong in his preaching against all of these things, against scientists, extremely strong against scientists. Practically, from the beginning of his movement, Srila Prabhupada was very strong against Mayavadis, this misleading Swamis. But actually, only a small group of the population are misled by these sorts of people. Mainly those then hippies were kind of influenced by them. But the whole society is misled by these material scientists. And the false conceptions they propagate into society. We see from, 1976, practically, you could say, how much of a focus Srila Prabhupada placed on combating these atheist Darwinism, the idea that life comes from matter, that we went to the moon, etc. All these different propaganda by scientists. Srila Prabhupada, he was very strong in opposing. And he wasn't shy about it. Just as early as 1968, famously, Srila Prabhupada's own secretary, then Purushottama Das, he was upset that Srila Prabhupada, he didn't accept the moon landing. He showed Srila Prabhupada on a television set the recording of the then moon landing, the footage they gave, and Srila Prabhupada just openly rejected it. It's not possible. How could have they gone to the moon? They were recorded somewhere. And it disturbed Purushottama's mind. And he tried in so many ways to get Srila Prabhupada to adjust this and that, but Srila Prabhupada, he didn't budge. He said elsewhere in different circumstances, but it applies still, I can't change the philosophy to please the Americans. So Srila Prabhupada, he didn't compromise the philosophy at any point in time. And he wasn't shy about promoting what the Bhagavatam says. Any portion of the Bhagavatam. He wasn't shy. It's not that he just spoke about the 10th canto, Krishna's pastimes, as many people then did in India and still do in India. Rather, he was very strong. If you see the verses, Srila Prabhupada, like the quote from the Bhagavatam, hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, etc. One shouldn't live one's life like a hog or dog, which a stool-eating creature, etc., like this, Rishabhadev's teachings, etc., like this. Very strong verses, but there are some of the Srila Prabhupada's most quoted verses. He was very strong in this regard. And he wasn't shy about making enemies either. Nowadays, there's sort of a conception that we should mold ourselves to society, devotees should enter into society, and gradually we should bring people according to their own conceptions. There's this idea of different ways, through going to interfaith conferences, presenting ourselves as not devotees, presenting ourselves as Hindus, etc. Just an overall conformity to societal norms. Whereas we see Srila Prabhupada, who openly deride or defy societal norms. And a time where feminism was, second-wave feminism, it was called then, was on the rise, Srila Prabhupada was openly against feminism. He openly promoted traditional gender roles. To reporters who would ask him, specifically ask him questions to get a controversial article, Srila Prabhupada would openly give these sort of defiant questions. And in an age where it was, during a time where the Vietnam War was very controversial, you could say, Srila Prabhupada openly said that, that actually he supported the government, saying that, yes, people, or that he said openly that because the people of this land are sinful, therefore, by force, they're forced to go over here to Vietnam and die like this. And in a time where material scientist was practically at its peak. Now it's gone down. Now people are skeptical of science. But during the 1970s, it was almost as if whatever the scientists say was an absolute fact. It was very, very strong. Because so many things were coming out of science at the time. So many material innovations were coming out. Different cars, air conditioning was becoming popular in society. Huge buildings, airplanes, mass media, etc. like this. All by means of modern science. But Srila Prabhupada openly defied science. He openly went against the grain. Why? Not just for the sake of being, not for the sake of being just going against the grain for the sake of going against it, but rather he wanted to give knowledge to people. That's the point. He opposed all these people openly, politicians, leaders, bogus swamis, avatars, etc., because he wanted to benefit the people in general. Two statements by Srila Prabhupada, interesting, I found these. He said, my mission is to defeat false yogis, gurus, so-called incarnations. I may not go back to Krishna, but I can expose these bogus rascals. Another one along the same lines, this is in a letter, I may not go back to Godhead, but I want to expose these cheaters. So you see, Srila Prabhupada, he's not in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. He doesn't necessarily care whether or not he's Of course, Srila Prabhupada is already perfect, but you see, he has compassion against everybody in society that's being misled in so many different ways. And by doing so, by this open opposition to so many different factors, Srila Prabhupada naturally, he expected enemies, just as the Pandavas naturally, although they were faultless, they had so many different enemies. Because the nature of this world is that when there's something immediately, as Srila Prabhupada said, immediately when you speak of God, when you speak of Krishna, because this world is nothing but it's a world of envy of Krishna, naturally there will be so much opposition. Srila Prabhupada said previously there was one Kamsa, but now there's so many different Kamsas in society. And all these Kamsas come out when Krishna consciousness is preached. But actually, Srila Prabhupada said this opposition to our preaching is a sign of success of the movement, because it shows that we're saying, well, people are hearing our message, and also that we have something substantial. In regards to this TM, Transcendental Meditation, this group that was selling some mantra for $5, the government, no government ever opposed them. They never had any lawsuits against them. You didn't see other religionists combat them. But you saw this with Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada's movement. Why? Because he said something substantial is there. So, because there's substantial knowledge in this movement, Srila Prabhupada said we can expect many enemies, just as the Pandavas, again, like I said, they're faultless, but they had so many enemies. There's a huge war. Millions and millions of different of enemies, we could say, opposing the Pandavas. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada said we can't expect an ideal situation in this world. We can't expect that everybody will be so inclined toward preaching Krishna consciousness. We have practical experience. We go out for book distribution immediately. It's commonplace, It's surprising if we go somewhere and to not be harassed by some sort of local authority, some sort of cop, some sort of whoever's running the place, etc., like that. Especially if we go time and time again. People don't like preaching of Krishna consciousness. But just as parents forcibly give their child nutrition, healthy food, medicine when he's sick, so similarly too, devotees with this vision, they go out and preach. Srila Prabhupada, he said, they're trying to kill God, this modern society, and we are putting God. Therefore, we're the greatest enemy of this society. So I mentioned this modern day Kamsas. And Srila Prabhupada himself, because of what he was doing, he had so many different enemies. Srila Prabhupada's own spiritual master, he had so many enemies, famously for what he was doing, opposing this sort of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He opposed this Brahmanism by birth. He opposed these caste Goswamis in Navadvip at the time, who were saying that we're the only bona fide gurus because we come in a seminal line from one of Nityananda, specifically. Advaita is also there. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he made many, many enemies because of this. Because practically this was taken at the time, in Navadvip at least, as that you must be initiated by one of these to be, or you must come in a Brahmana family to be a Brahmana. But because he opposed these things, he had very strong opposition in doing so. And even to the point of they tried attempts on his life. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he opposed the same things as his Guru Maharaj, and he opposed more. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, although of course he always adhered to the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Mainly we see he was cooperative with the British government. We don't hear of him opposing material scientists because, they weren't so prominent. But Srila Prabhupada, he opposed, as I quoted, he opposed the leaders, he opposed these Goswamis. Srila Prabhupada, one quote, he said, in Vrindavan, the caste Goswamis are my enemies, preaching that we're not authorized. In Mayapur, many of my own god brothers have become my enemies because they don't like that my disciples are calling me Prabhupada. And in Bombay, the municipal corporation are my enemies. They don't want my temple. So all over the world, Srila Prabhupada had enemies, but he wasn't deterred by any of these enemies. Rather, he went on preaching Krishna consciousness. And by doing so, what is that? There's one, how does that go? I forget. How does that, 10:2:32, you know that verse? Pull up 10:2:33. If you don't mind. I forget how it goes.
Tatanite Madhavatavaka Kvachit Brashanti Marga Dvaibada Soredaha Dvaya Bigupta Vicharati Nirpaya Vinayaka Nikamurta Soprabho. Can you go to the translation? So in the previous verse, the demigods, it's a famous verse, they pray that impersonalists fall down, basically, because they're puffed up. But here, the demigods, they continue that even if a devotee falls down from the path of devotion, they don't fall like non-devotees. Rather, they're still protected by the Lord. Thus, they fearlessly traverse the heads of their opponents and continue to progress in devotional service. The demigods are speaking this for a devotee who will fall down, or who has fallen down. What to speak of devotees who go on in devotional service? Krishna personally helps devotees overcome obstacles in their service. The key, as Srila Prabhupada gave, is just sticking to the regular principles, just sticking to the basic process of Krishna consciousness. It's not something fantastic or something wonderful. The wonderful thing is that you can chant 16 rounds every day and follow the 4 regs every single day. That's a very wonderful thing. And by doing so, all obstacles in our Krishna consciousness eventually just fade away. They're overcome. Just like I was mentioning this 1976 brainwashing case. In 1977, it was amazingly, as we were hearing some weeks earlier, it was amazingly ruled that the Hare Krishna religion, by the New York Supreme Court, the Hare Krishna religion is a bona fide religion. And even today, that case has weight with devotees. Devotees still cite that case to different people, etc., like that. So this, what was apparently a major obstacle to the movement's progress, was completely overcome. So similarly, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, as I was quoting earlier, he overcame so many obstacles. In the Nectar Devotion, Srila Prabhupada, he writes regarding the struggles of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that he struggled hard for a long time and eventually it came out successful. Now anyone from any part of the world may be considered a Vaishnava irregardless of his birth or place of birth. And so similarly too with our own Srila Prabhupada, we see his struggles to do everything. Just recently, we were in India and we saw this, I was mentioning this Juhu temple that Srila Prabhupada in Juhu, Bombay, Mumbai now it is, he got so much opposition from the person who, he bought a piece of property, and the person who was supposed to give him the property, he was giving him such a hard time for I think a year and a half, something like that. Very, very difficult situation. And then lawyers got involved, and then the guy died, and then he got the property. Then the city started giving him so many issues in trying to build the thing itself because the city didn't want devotees building a temple there. Then they started building, and then the devotees were getting cheated by the workers, and so many issues were, that's just a small glimpse of the issues with the property. But, I went there, I saw it for the first time, and I was thinking, this is the genius of Srila Prabhupada. That temple now, so many, easily thousands of people go there every single day. There's such a dynamic program that's going on in that temple. So many devotees are made from that temple. It's such a successful temple. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada struggled extremely hard for that temple. Practically, he himself said at one point that practically, because of my concern, I'm paraphrasing, because of my concern for this Juhu temple, it shortened my lifespan. And even at the end of his life, Srila Prabhupada was still in anxiety over this Juhu temple. But we see Srila Prabhupada's hard struggle for this Juhu temple, it came out very wonderfully. So similarly, his struggle for Vrindavan, for Mayapur, for the movement in India in general, for the whole movement. Srila Prabhupada's struggle in coming to the West, coming to America, his struggle against so many different enemies, he's definitely come out successful. So he wanted his disciples to continue struggle for Krishna, to take on anxiety for Krishna. Not that, as we were hearing sometime earlier, not that we're just sitting back as Srila Prabhupada, I quoted earlier. We don't want these Vaishnavas sitting down rascals. We want Arjuna, or we want no one. Krishna didn't tell Arjuna to go and sit down and just chant Hare Krishna and retire like that. Krishna wanted Arjuna to struggle. It was a struggle fighting against the Kurus. It was a struggle for Arjuna to see Abhimanyu killed. It was a struggle to do all these things. Not just Abhimanyu, all his friends, all his etc. So many Pandavas, not Pandavas, but so many of their, both the Kuru side and the Pandava side, so many friends and well-wishers were killed. It was a struggle for Arjuna, but Krishna wanted it out of Arjuna. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted his disciples to struggle in Krishna consciousness, because by that struggle, it creates an ideal situation for us to come to Krishna consciousness. An easygoing life and spiritual realization go ill together. So if we take up these difficulties for Krishna, just as the Pandavas, they could have easily just said, okay, you can have the kingdom, no problem. They were content. They're pure devotees. Their contentment, their how do you say? Their bliss is in rendering devotional service to Krishna. Their bliss isn't having some sort of material kingdom or being kings, as it was for Dhritarashtra or Duryodhana. They weren't thinking like that. They could have easily done without the kingdom, but Krishna wanted them to have the kingdom. He wanted to see this. So, in the same line, devotees should also be very active, taking up service in the mission, taking on anxiety, struggling in the mission, and whatever aspect that may be. Book distribution or preaching is the immediate cause. Obviously, it's a preaching movement. Preaching means struggling. Preaching is not an easy thing. Anything, any preacher's job, especially that of a Krishna conscious, it wasn't easy for Christian preachers, for example, to go to India, but they were successful in doing so. What to speak of Krishna conscious preachers? Krishna conscious, we're presenting Krishna as he is, the absolute truth as he is. So much opposition will be there. Just as when Krishna was born, immediately so much opposition came. So many demons came to Vrindavan just shortly after Krishna was born. So similarly, too, we can expect demons to come on our way. But as I was mentioning, Srila Prabhupada considered them signs of success, actually. Like this. So many enemies. I was mentioning Srila Prabhupada, many enemies elsewhere. So many different things. He was accused by Mayavadi sannyasis for spoiling the Hindu system of religion. Srila Prabhupada writes in some place in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Devotees, so similarly now they're considered, sometimes, of course, now as less spoiling Hinduism, or presenting a sectarian notion of Hinduism, or presenting some sectarian religion, some sort of unscientific ideas, some sort of mythology. These are all misleading theories that I was speaking earlier that we have to combat, that we have to actively work against and dispel. I was mentioning so many different things: Darwin's theory, impersonalism, communism, even Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was simultaneously against communism, and he was also against capitalism. He fought against both. Real thing is spiritual communism, as he gave. So, Srila Prabhupada, he would say this is a revolutionary movement. As I was saying, he was a martial spirit. So with Srila Prabhupada, he was a revolutionary. He said this Bhagavatam is meant to bring about a revolution in the lives of misdirected lives of impious men. What is that? Impious society, something like that. So this Bhagavatam is a revolutionary literature, and just like these so-called material revolutionaries, they have their own revolutionary piece of literature. Some people write up some sort of manifesto, just like the communists we see, communist revolutionaries. Their manifesto is, Communist Manifesto by Marx. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada's manifesto is this Bhagavatam, this Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada, he was a revolutionary, presenting the teachings of Bhagavatam to the world. How is it a revolutionary movement? It's obvious, because we oppose every single thing this material society stands for: illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, meat eating, and ultimately, at the core, forgetfulness and aversion to Krishna. All these other things, they're important, but this is the chief thing. So, just this in and of itself, trying to bring about remembrance to people, this in and of itself is a very revolutionary thing, because this tradition, revolution means, in one sense, to change the norm. You could say, take a simple definition. So the norm here in this material world that's been going on for kalpas and kalpas and yugas and creations and destructions of the universe, one after another, is for nothing but forgetfulness of Krishna. So it's a revolutionary thing to try and bring people to remembrance of Krishna. And there's so many other subsets of that. Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to completely change the societal structure. He said it's not practical to have this demonic society, it's headed towards its own ruination. He wanted to institute Varnashram not only within India, where it was previously existing. Of course, previously it was all over the world, but he wanted to introduce Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, etc., also in the Western countries. He wanted Vedic Vrindavan villages In America, the most industrialized, modernized country in the world, etc. like this. It's a very revolutionary idea, very unconventional idea. One quote, "There cannot be peace unless you reform the whole social structure, and that can be done only by this movement." We see amongst prominent revolutionaries, generally they change the social structure for the most part. Of course, there's revolutions in science, etc. like that, but when we think of revolutionary, we think of people like, who's this guy in Cuba? Castro, and then Che, who's that Che? Guevara. When people think of revolutionary, they think of him. What did he do? He completely changed the economic structure of Cuba, completely changed the social structure of Cuba. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to completely change economic and social structure. These things are, of course, secondary. Real thing is invoking this remembrance of Krishna, but we can see that Srila Prabhupada, he wasn't, to tie back to this original point, he wasn't a timid so-called Vaishnava, nor was Bhima a timid so-called Vaishnava. They are very, very strong personalities. When you meet many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, or even those who not even necessarily disciples, they just happen to come across Srila Prabhupada, happen to meet him, they stand out in his mind as a very strong personality. Many disciples, they recall how unique and how, although Srila Prabhupada was short in stature, how commanding of a presence he had. So similarly too of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And when you meet seriously practicing devotees, you can practically feel that this is a very strong personality. It's not some sort of, although Vaishnavas are meek and humble, they're not walkovers. When Vaishnavas are challenged, they don't just fold to demonic opposition. Krishna didn't fold to the many different, I'm thinking of Kamsa specifically, but there's so many, Jarasandha, so many different demonic kings that opposed Krishna. Krishna didn't fold to them. His devotees didn't fold to them. So similarly, we shouldn't fold to demonic elements in society. Opposition will be there, definitely, but as Srila Prabhupada said, as I quoted earlier, we should go on and struggle for Krishna, and by doing so, we'll come out successful. Real success means, of course, going back to Godhead, and definitely for Krishna, definitely for especially preachers, Srila Prabhupada gave the guarantee that the preachers are especially dear to Krishna. Just as the front lines, everybody's important in a war, the medics, those who are making generals, those who are cooking, etc. But the army and the government, they give special attention to the frontline soldiers because they're undergoing the brunt, we could say. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, he acknowledged that the preachers in the Krishna consciousness movement, they're especially favored by Krishna. There's mercy there for everybody, no doubt, no matter what anybody is doing within the Krishna consciousness movement. But the frontline soldiers, this distribution of Krishna consciousness is a guarantee for going back to God. And I'm speaking all these things that we have to combat misconceptions, we have to struggle for Krishna. So all these things, this combating misconceptions, Srila Prabhupada, he considered that the crux of it all was, again, the simple program of just book distribution. By introducing this knowledge in society, it will change the society. We've already seen that society is rapidly, there's an idea of reincarnation now. Previously, in the 70s, it was like, people wouldn't even entertain the idea. But you see many people are open to the idea of reincarnation now. These are subdharmic principles, but we see there's a change in society. People are changing their lifestyles, and etc. like this. So it's having an effect, this book distribution, this preaching of Krishna consciousness. It combats these theories in society. Preaching is also there. Preaching engagements, of course, but when people sit down and they read these books, you can lecture, just like sometimes in distributing books, some Christians want to convert us. I was just seeing one video by yourself yesterday, some Christian in that famous video, that big video. I was thinking, a Christian can preach to us for 20 minutes, but it's not going to change our view. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada in one letter, he said, what will your 5-minute lecture do? But if they take a book, that will change their life. Why? Because a book, just this book alone, see how big it is. How many hours does it take to read this book? By reading this book, by people reading these books of Srila Prabhupada, getting these books and reading, they're hearing Srila Prabhupada speak for hours and hours and hours and hours. And Shrimvata Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantistu Bhadrani Vitanoti Sarit Satam. By that continual hearing, their heart will be cleansed. And the practical proof of it, Srila Prabhupada said, was that I came to the West, and he made that prayer, he quoted that verse in either on the Jaladuta or Boston Harbor, I forget, one of the two. And he said it worked. He preached the message of Bhagavatam, and people came to him. So this, etc., like this. I made a bunch of different points, but the conclusion is that we should take up this struggle for Krishna. We shouldn't be deterred in our struggle for Krishna. We shouldn't be, we shouldn't feel like timid so-called Vaishnavas. Rather, we should, and Srila Prabhupada wanted us to go against openly this demonic society, these demonic views, these demonic misconceptions that are floating in society, which is best done by preaching Krishna consciousness and distributing this knowledge in society. Oh, okay, one thing, it slipped my mind, but I wanted to quote this. So the goal of this book distribution, I think I've quoted this before, different devotees have quoted it, but when asked, Srila Prabhupada, what is the point of this book distribution? Srila Prabhupada, you expect to bring people to Krishna consciousness. You expect Srila Prabhupada to reply such a thing, to become devotees like that. But Srila Prabhupada, he said, to give knowledge, to educate people. We're distributing books to educate people. We're not so much concerned with making devotees, at least in this circumstance, he said. Rather, we want to give knowledge to society in general. We want to give knowledge that life comes from life. That's specifically culminating, of course, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So like that. So, I didn't speak so much on Bhima, because I don't know so much about Bhima. I'm sorry. I haven't read the Mahabharata in full. But Bhima, taking the purport in this spirit, that Bhima didn't take these advances of the Kurus lying down. I've tried to speak on that a little bit. So I can end there and open it up for any comments or questions anybody has at this point. Otherwise, we can...
Wonderful class, and I'm very, very pleased to see that the next generation is taking everything so seriously. I mean, you can't speak like that unless you've reading Prabhupada's books, talking about it with other devotees, taking shelter and getting insights from, senior devotees like that. It's obvious from listening to you that you're doing all those things, and that really was very encouraging for me, very enlivening for me, because, as the previous generation, Prabhupada disciple, we're always concerned about what's going to happen to this movement. We've got 10, 20 years left, Are there any of these guys going to really come up and, grab the baton?
Take it on, what will happen, yeah.
Yeah, and, when I hear classes like this and like yesterday, I feel like, okay, yeah, it's going to happen. Things are going to be able to pass the movement on to a generation of devotees that's going to be competent to take the baton and run the next lap, so to speak. So thank you very much. I appreciate, your dedication. You're taking, this whole philosophy and being a devotee very seriously. And I'm very glad I was able to, sit here this morning and hear your class. Thank you.
Well, it's through just as sometimes we give the example here, it's just like the first generation devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada such as yourself, because you made a beachhead for devotees like that. Otherwise, I couldn't take up the Krishna consciousness. Definitely, if I had to join during the time of Srila Prabhupada, I do not think I would have survived. It's through the mercy of devotees like yourself who have paved the way for other devotees, just like, we have a nice temple here, it's a good association. But, in the early days of the movement, it wasn't like that. Devotees would go out, so I've heard, Sankirtan, it was a regular thing, devotees, the whole Sankirtan party would get arrested. People on the street, they would just harass devotees. I think you were telling the story, somebody was telling the story that Pragosh Prabhu, he was punched in the airport one day, people would spit on devotees. It's like, now it's not like that. Of course, we don't necessarily have so many allies, people are still our enemies, but definitely it's not the austerity that, so through the dedication and sacrifice of the first generation of devotees, everything else has come about. Otherwise, without that sacrifice, just like I'm speaking the Juhu temple, so many people were coming to the Juhu temple, becoming devotees, but that was possible because Giriraj Swami, Brahmananda Prabhu, Madhusha Prabhu, who wasn't there practically, So many devotees, they suffered like anything on that rat-infested, cockroach-infested property, jungle, practically like a jungle, So, like that. Another thing that was coming to my mind, Of course, there's the famous statement by Srila Prabhupada that even if everything goes to hell, paraphrasing, that just by all the books that were distributed, still devotees would take up the Krishna consciousness movement. They'll continue like that. One devotee asked Srila Prabhupada that what will happen if ISKCON fails, what will happen? And Srila Prabhupada said more devotees will come just from the books that have already been distributed. So the books are there in society, the teachings are there in society. And, although this is the world of forgetfulness of Krishna, there are people who are looking for Krishna, looking for some sort of answer. So when they get these books, no matter what, you can't change what's in the books. The brainwashed books are already there. Like that, so, yeah.
Yeah, what you say is true. And, I think it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada says how the ISKCON movement is a branch of the Chaitanya tree, So this is, and I think he also says, I can't remember the exact words, but it's like a continuation of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So, what you say is true about that, the Prabhupada disciples, but, I think if you were born 30 years earlier and you could have done it, but this is all part of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. It's just playing out in certain personalities with certain bodies at a certain time and played one particular role, and now the next generation is going to play another role. I don't see the next generation in any way as being inferior devotees but it's nice. You had the right attitude in glorifying the previous generation. That's the etiquette. That's what how we should be thinking. That I'll glorify Prabhupada and the acharyas. And it's good, but at the same time, there's many places where Prabhupada says, due to many, many millions of births, I think you kind of referred to it indirectly in one sense earlier in your class, that we've taken, just that somebody's like senior in this particular lifetime, that's not like the ultimate or absolute indication that somebody's more advanced or, this is a multi-life process. We've been in this for, trying to progress towards pure devotional service for only Krishna, God knows how many births as the expression would go. So I just see it as like a continuity, a continuous unfolding of this Leela of, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And, Prabhupada disciples were in one part of the Leela, and now the Leela is continuing through all of you. That's my vision. But thank you. It was a wonderful class. I really appreciate it tremendously.
Jai. Thank you.
Anybody else
I was just wondering about that line, the Dira Dira Jana Priyo Priya Karo Nirmatsura. So they were liked by the gentle and the ruffians because they weren't envious of anybody. I was wondering, does that mean that the 6 Goswamis had no enemies, or just that?
Well, it's also true of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, he said he had enemies, but practically you see when Srila Prabhupada came in the presence of others, he would speak, there's so many conversations, darshans of Srila Prabhupada with scientists, and he would openly oppose them, And but the thing is Srila Prabhupada, he doesn't have envy. Pure devotees, they don't have envy. The 6 Goswamis, they don't have envy. They're free from envy. And so you can't, in other words, people can pick up on that. And people, in the remembrance of Srila Prabhupada specifically, you see that, yes, you want to say something?
Can I give you one great example?
Yeah. So anyway, just succinctly they have enemies, but when they come into the association of their enemies, the enemies don't feel like enemies. It's just like the Pandavas, a very good example. Bhima, the Pandavas, the Kurus, were enemies. But then when the battle was at night, when the battle wasn't going on, they came together and they, as if friends, but even though they're trying to kill each other. So similarly too, like that, of course, that's the nature, dharma of a kshatriya, but especially for pure devotees. We see Srila Prabhupada, he was upset with his godbrothers were upset with him, etc. like that. But when they came together, it was very cordial, very kind, very pleasing, really. He had affection for his godbrothers, actually, in one example. So, you want to say something?
Yeah, just one example of that. There was a very famous show, like a host talk show, called the Alan Burke Show. It was very popular. My parents used to watch it. It was like Johnny Carson. I don't know, I'm so old, it's kind of. But anyway, I don't know who the equivalent shows are on television today, so I can't even give you an example. But it was, it was a very popular guy, was watched a lot. Everybody knew his style. He used to invite guests on, and then he would, he'd start off kind of cool with them, and then he'd kind of ask a pointed question. And then generally the people would try to defend themselves, and then he would just kind of like he'd rip the people to shreds a lot of times, And anyway, he invited Prabhupada on the show. And a lot of devotees were going, Prabhupada, I don't know, it's a good idea. But Prabhupada went, and Alan Burke, as you said, he could sense that this is like somebody different. He said, this is a real Swami, and he just said, also, he just asked him questions, and he asked a couple questions. Prabhupada answered him perfectly, and Alan Burke said, yeah, that's right. He asked about something about sexuality. What, aren't you against sex? And Prabhupada said, no, we're not against sex. We just think that people should be married, because if you're constantly preoccupied with capturing new partners, you can't have a peaceful mind to, pursue spiritual life. So, and Alan Burke just went, yeah, right, you're right. In other words, here was a guy this was his whole thing, exposing people and agitating, and that was like, the people in the audience who were watching, they were waiting to see, not with Prabhupada. I think it's mentioned in the Leela Amrita even, but he showed tremendous respect for Prabhupada, made like a half a dozen statements in glorification of Prabhupada. I mean, it might seem like nothing, but for me that was like, wow, because I knew this personality, for him to give Prabhupada this a stamp of approval, not that Prabhupada needed any material, karma's stamp of approval, but I thought that was really significant, That's just one example that just popped to my mind.
Another example that comes to my mind is that, this Purushottam, right? This devotee who left because of the moon landing. Are you familiar with this story? Yeah. So, very interesting, the Vedabase, Ekanath Prabhu is releasing a Vedabase, and it has interviews from the Leela Amrita. It will come out next year. And there's an interview from Purushottam in 1979, something like that. So, in that interview, so he left the movement. He didn't like, it was openly against Srila Prabhupada's position on the moon landing, and it was so much against it, he left the movement. He was Prabhupada's secretary, he left being Prabhupada's secretary like that. But still, he had a very good opinion of Srila Prabhupada. He said Srila Prabhupada, he knew how to make people happy, he was very kind, etc., like that. He disagreed with his philosophy as to his misfortune, but still, personally, like that, completely like non-envious like that. When you see many different people of Srila Prabhupada like that, I was giving an example of God brothers like that. So yeah, that's also a good. I was coming to mind, but I couldn't remember the exact context. Yeah, so there are many, even scientists that will come and I forget the exact conversation. I read it and translated it into a diary recently. There was one scientist, he came in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, and basically Srila Prabhupada somehow convinced him to admit, he convinced the scientist to admit that he himself is a cheater. Is what happens when you're free from envy, that you can sense. So, you have something? Low on time.
It was about that.
Okay,
comment. Yeah. When I was in Salem and the devotee gave class there, he commented on that, like, gentle with the,
Yeah.
So basically, he said that comes from the statement of, like, if you love Krishna, that statement comes from, like, if you serve Krishna, you're pleasing to everybody, or you serve the demigods, or everything is satisfied.
Yeah.
So just being a pure devotee of Krishna, like, everybody's, like, automatically, like, pleased with you. So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does that make sense? Or, like,
yeah, it's just like water the root.
Yeah, that's the same.
You would water everything,
Yeah, that's
It's a
fine,
practical example. So, you had something I would do? I saw a hand, sorry.
Yeah, you're quoting this verse from the 10th canto about even if a devotee falls down. Yeah, you made a very interesting point. You said that Krishna will personally remove the obstacles in a devotee's life, and you said if they just stick to the path. It's such an interesting concept. And I was just kind of thinking of an analogy, like explain this, like you have like a car, and the car is just like super, super dirty, and it like needs to be cleaned, and then all of a sudden you just come outside one day and the car is just like squeaky clean. Like, how did this happen? So if a devotee just continues, like you quoted that verse, Vidhu Noti Sarutsatam, Krishna's the one who's actually removing those things. But it's very mystical, and it's just a very fascinating concept to me. If you just continue with the process, like you're saying, Krishna removes those obstacles. It's very interesting.
One thing that came to my mind, I meant to cite, but I forgot to quote it in the class. There's one letter, Srila Prabhupada, he writes Satsarup Das Goswami. I forget the full context of the letter, but I was just reading it yesterday. So in that letter, he says, quote, you mentioned that there are many stumbling blocks in your path. I can at once kick out all stumbling blocks with one kick of my foot, something like that. If you simply accept my guidance. It's an amazing quote, you know. So we simply follow, you know, of course, Srila Prabhupada is for our own spiritual master too. If we simply accept the guidance of our spiritual master, he can kick out all obstacles there in our path. So, like that. Anything else from Koki Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I had a question, that just two small comments. But you were talking in the beginning of the class just about how Srila Prabhupada like never backed down from like Shastra, and even if it was controversial, he upheld it. And that kind of got me like thinking like that's such an important quality. I mean, that's like the main quality for a guru to have, because otherwise, if someone is like a spiritual teacher or is trying to be a spiritual teacher, or we see like sometimes devotees are like new and they try to preach, but then like someone doesn't like what they say, so they kind of like change it, so they want to fry people out. But that how important that quality is to like no matter what to like stick to like the verdict of Shastra and like present that in the predecessor acharyas. And just talking about like revolution, Avadut Chandra Prabhu posted some maybe like a week or so ago this conversation with like Tapapunj Prabhu, this class about Varnashram. And in that class, just kind of paraphrasing, but he was making the point. One of the points was that that how people farm nowadays is not sustainable. You know, they like destroy the land, they kill the animals. It's just, it's just to make money pretty much. And so, but anyways, to kind of go on that revolution, but, the Krishna conscious way of like, farming and of living is sustainable. There's the conception of like karma there and all those things, but it ties in. It's just that whole concept how like, like we're giving these books to educate people so that they understand that, the choices that you make in this life and the activities that you do, that affects your next life, that there is a next life and things like that. But then I had a question. If you were making too, you were talking about like pretty much disobeying the spiritual master is like an act of treason. Could you elaborate on that more? I thought that was interesting.
Oh, just like you, if you disobey the orders of a general, I don't know about now what they do, but during times of war, formerly it was punishable by death practically. So disobey the spiritual master. What is it? Court-martial, yeah. So to disobey the spiritual master is the cause of spiritual death, because the spiritual master is your connection with. Put it simply, he's your connection with Krishna, If you don't do what he says, if you don't do what what is that? Nakati Katopi. Yeah, it's a very succinct way of putting it, yeah. So like that, simply put, if you don't do what your spiritual master says, how can you possibly please Krishna, So much could be said about that, but that's the really succinct answer. Do you want more? Or?
It's up to you. I just like the way you put that. I was like kind of like really like heavy into the, I'm not like heavy in a bad sense, but it was like really to the point.
I mean, it's just like especially if you've accepted a spiritual master, it's one thing, as a general, it's not expected that a general will command an average citizen, nor if the citizen disobeys his order. It's a very strange situation, actually. But if somebody says he enlists in the army and his commander is telling him to do something and he doesn't do it, then that's a very grave act, which we're saying court-martial. He'll be sentenced to death because of that. So similarly, too, if we take initiation and we don't do what the spiritual master says, that's a very great. Srila Prabhupada, he was very heavy on this. He would say many times, you take an initiation before the fire, before the deed. You're not even a human being, he said. You're like an animal. The difference between a human being and an animal, cats and dogs, he said, they don't have an idea of a word of honor. But a human being, he has an idea of a word of honor. That specifically, I'm mentioning the 4 regs here specifically, and chanting 16 rounds. So coming to that point of entering within Krishna's army, and then Krishna, the external representation of Paramatma, is giving you an order. You don't take that order, it's the same thing. It's like treason against the Supreme Personality of God, practically like that. So dishonorable discharge. Yeah, dishonorable discharge. The thing is, Krishna won't let you go, though, unlike the material army. Somehow he'll drag you back eventually after millions and millions of births, but yeah, so. Okay, anything from women? Otherwise we can finish. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.